Welcome back to the Survival Gardener Minute. I am David the Good, and today's question is from Ellen Blumhart, who asks how I save seeds. Do I hold some seed back when I plant a packet of seeds? Do I save them somewhere, or do I just plant them all and hope for the best? And do I save the seed packets for next year so I know what I had and I can save the seeds with the old packet if I save the next generation? So here's how I save seeds. If I come across a plant that I really like let's say I bought a variety of seeds from Baker Creek. Like right now I have a whole bunch of Baker Creek seed tomato varieties that I'm testing. So I am not that organized. So I'm pretty much probably going to lose the seed packets or accidentally leave them out in the garden or something like that. So what I do is I plant the seeds that I want to grow, and I generally plant most of them. If I have a little bit left in the bottom of the packet, I might stick it back in the fridge, but half the time I end up forgetting about it for a year or two and then not replanting. I've got to do better about that during the pandemic or I'm gonna die. But you know, what I usually end up doing is giving the rest of the seed packet to one of my kids and saying, hey, you want to plant the rest of this chocolate pear tomato? You know, go stick it in your garden space, because each of my kids have some of their own. I had some carbon tomatoes, and I had the seed packet came with a bazillion seeds in it, way more than I had space to grow. So I gave the rest of the packet to my neighbor. Now I am saving carbon tomato seeds again. So when I save them, I do the fermentation method of saving tomato seeds, where I let some of the guts of the tomato rot on the counter for a couple of days, and then I strain out the seeds and clean it up, and then I dry those for a week or two inside the house at room temperature in a dry spot. And then when they're nice and dry, I put them in a little Ziploc bag and I label them and I stick them into the refrigerator crisper drawer to save for next year or for whenever I want to plant them, because I've kind of got a year-round growing season. So that ends up down in the crisper drawer. It's better if you have like you know the little mason jars that you use for jellies and jams and that sort of thing. They're like this big. Those guys. If you have those guys, those are really nice for saving seeds. Also, if you had like smaller vials and that sort of thing, like old pill bottles, that kind of thing, if you label them and they have a nice seal to them, yeah, so you can close them and they're pretty much not going to get any moisture from the fridge into them, you can save them in a cool place. There's two things that destroy the saving time of seeds. One of them is humidity, and the other one is how hot, how cold it is. So it's humidity and it's temperature. And so here where I am, basically it's like upper 70s to 80s all the time. And the humidity is usually over 80%. And so therefore, when I first got here, I left some seeds out, in my, like on the shelf of my bedroom or something. And after I went to go plant them 6 months later, and they were spoiled, like they would not grow. Germination rate of 0. So the humidity level is so high, plus the warm weather, that it destroys them. So I've got to store them in the fridge. If you want to store seeds for a long time, store them in the fridge. Some people will store them in the freezer, but in order to store them in the freezer, you're going to have to get the moisture levels really low in the seeds to like 8% or so. So if you had a dehydrator, you might dehydrate your seeds down at like 90 degrees to dehydrate them for an hour or two till they get really nice and dry, and then you could freeze them. But I don't recommend putting them in the freezer because there's some variables there, and it's better to just store them in the fridge. They'll keep for a couple of years there. So I don't save the seed packets unless they still have a few seeds left in them. I generally label things with a magic marker on whatever container that I have there. And I also set aside areas of my garden that are for seed saving. So if I have a bean variety that I really like, I'll mark off 4 square feet of it, and I will save all the beans and just let them produce dry pods. So that's just a really quick crash answer on seed saving. There's a ton more that goes into it, like how many plants you should have for certain varieties. Like for corn, you should have more than 100, but for tomatoes, you can save from 1 tomato plant. For squash, you can save from 1 squash plant. The depression over time is not that bad on squash. So if you do that with corn, you're going to have like almost no yield in a year or two. If you have beans, you can save from 1 bean plant. It's kind of complicated. Kale is like 12 to 16 plants, but you don't need to know all that. You can find it seed to seed. Suzanne Ashworth, very good resource. And of course, I've got a lot of information in Free Plants for Everyone, the good guide to plant propagation. So I'll catch you guys next time. Thanks for the question. And until then, may your thumbs always be green.